you somebody who is intuitive, sensitive, and nurturing? Or do you need to get more in touch with your emotions? Either way, you'll want to stay tuned and learn how to interpret the Queen of Cups when she shows up in a reading. Hi everybody, I'm Sue Ellen Clayton. Welcome to my channel where we are learning the tarot deck one card at a time. Today's card is the Queen of Cups. Most people find the court cards to be the most challenging part of the tarot deck, and I will do my best to demystify it here. I will be using the Rider-Waite Tarot deck. You'll find the link to the deck below, as well as to the many books that I've used in my research. So let's get started. In simplistic terms, the Queen is the mother figure of the royal court. She's married to the king and they have 2 children. The page represents their young child, and the knight is their frat boy's son who is off to college, finding his way in the world and trying not to get into too much trouble. In the Middle Ages in Europe, kings came to power through conquest, election, inheritance, or some other kind of agreement. They ruled people and territories within their defined borders. Kings were leaders and the ultimate authority, and pretty much the buck stops here member of the royal court. They had great power due to their position, and everybody knew it. Queens also had power, but it was quite different. Most, but not all queens, married into power, and their role was a supportive one. She got what she wanted through understanding people and working behind the scenes to get what she wanted. The queen was the nurturer and caretaker of the kingdom. She has an inward maturity and was generally admired by the people in her kingdom. One of the reasons that court cards are challenging is that they can represent 3 things. The first is a person. Queens were considered to be mature women over the age of 30. Depending on your age, a queen could represent your mother, grandmother, adult child, romantic partner, boss, sister, or any other mature woman in your life. The second thing a queen can represent is a part of yourself that is nurturing. And the third thing that a queen can represent is a situation that involves a feminine-like energy of support. The queen could represent any kind of mature, nurturing person in your life, male or female. For instance, I have a lovely male dentist who is almost 70 years old. He is extremely kind and empathetic, and I would put him and his dental treatments in the category of a queen. So how do you know whether this queen represents a real person, a part of yourself, or a new approach to life? First of all, go by the question. If it still isn't clear, look at the surrounding cards and its position in a spread. Here are 2 things to keep in mind when we discuss the court cards. First of all, don't give much credence to the ages, gender, or physical characteristics. For instance, a queen is traditionally considered to be a woman who is over 30. Does that mean that she doesn't represent your lover who is 25 years old and male? No, it does not. Secondly, and most important, look at the energy from this card. Your level of maturity is not based on your age, and it can vary greatly in different areas of your life. We all know super mature people in their teens and very immature people in their 80s. You can also be mature in one area of your life, such as relationships, and totally reckless in another area of your life, such as finances. One of the easiest ways to understand the personality of each queen is to understand the chart on the screen. Each member of the court card's personality is related to 2 elements. Here's a quick reminder of what each element means. Pentacles are connected to the element of earth. It's all about things in the material world, such as our bodies, homes, nature, or how we earn our living. These people are very stable. They work hard and enjoy traditions. Wands is connected to the element of fire. These people tend to be feisty, confident, enthusiastic, adventurous, extroverted, passionate, flashy, and high energy. These people make good athletes and good salespeople. Cups are connected to the element of water. This card is all about emotions. Cups people are gentle, loving, sensitive, nurturing, and feel things deeply. These people make good healers and social workers. Swords is connected to the element of air. Swords is all about communicating and expressing ourselves. This includes our thoughts about ourselves as well as our thoughts about the world around us. This encompasses intelligence, knowledge, truth, mental clarity, and our sense of right and wrong. These people make good lawyers and writers. Each of the court cards is made up of two elements. The first element is related to their rank. On the column down the left, you can see that all pages are related to earth, all knights are related to fire, all queens are related to water, and all kings are related to air. Each member of the court card also has a suit, and along the top of the chart you can see the four suits. Pentacles are related to earth, wands are related to fire, cups are related to water, and swords are related to air. As you can see on the chart, the Queen of Cups has a double dose of the water element. The rank of all the queens connects to water, which makes sense because they are the most nurturing, emotional, mother energy of the court cards. The Queen of Cups is also connected to the suit of cups, which is the element of water. So we have someone who is doubly emotional, compassionate, and caring. There are no other elements to dilute her emotional nature. We don't have fire to make her stop focusing on her feelings and do something, swords to make her respond with her thoughts instead of her feelings, or earth to make her more grounded. We get pure emotion with this queen. In the Queen of Cups, we see a woman sitting on her throne. The throne has a clamshell and two cherubs on the backrest, and another cherub on the bottom that is holding a fish. She is wearing a gold crown that is open at the top. On the crown, we see 3 small loops and 2 sets of 9 circles. She is holding an elaborate chalice. On the top of the chalice is a cross, and there are angels on the top of each handle. She is wearing a blue and white dress, over which is a blue and white cloak with a wave design and pink lining. We also see a red clam clasp holding her cloak together. She is wearing stockings and her right foot is touching the water. Her feet are resting on smooth, colored stones. She is surrounded by water. In the background, we see yellow cliffs with grass on top. The sky is blue and clear. When the Queen of Cups appears in a reading, it can mean that someone or a part of yourself is intuitive, spiritual, and emotional. It can represent someone who is kind, gentle, nurturing, sensitive, and compassionate. The Queen of Cups is the most heart-centered of the Queen and just wants to help people. This card can also indicate that it is time for you to get in touch with your emotions. Let's talk about the symbolism of the Queen of Cups. In this card, we see a queen on a throne. The throne has 2 cherubs on the backrest and another cherub on the bottom of the throne. Because cherubs are basically low-level angels who carry out God's plan, they can represent protection and her connection to spirit. Or, because cherubs also look like children, they can represent her maternal abilities. The cherub at the base of her throne holds a fish. Fish live in the water and can represent your body, tears, or the unconscious realm. They are also a religious symbol. The fish can signify Christ and the miracle of the loaves and fishes. We discuss this story in the Page of Cups, which is in the Bible in John 6, verses 1 to 14. The story is that Jesus wanted to feed a crowd of 5,000 people, but all he had were 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Jesus thanks God for this gift and manages to feed everybody, and there were leftovers, so it was evidence that Jesus could perform miracles. Another link to Christianity is that water was used to baptize people, so people basically went into the water like fishes. Finally, the fish symbol was used as a symbol for persecuted Christians in the first centuries after Christ's death. Christians would use the fish to identify themselves and mark their meeting places. On the throne's backrest, we can see a clamshell behind the queen's head. We also see a red clamshell clasp holding her cloak together. A clamshell opens and closes. It can indicate her fragility because she can choose to hide herself away or show up happy as a clam. The clamshell at her throat can show that she understands the weight of the emotions she speaks of and how they can heal and help others. It also indicates that she might not always be able to hide her feelings. In a few moments, I'll talk more about how I relate to this card, but I totally resonate to this too. I am always thinking about my need to say things carefully, and I'm also someone who does a terrible job hiding my emotions. The Queen of Cups is wearing a gold crown that is open at the top. If you compare her crown with her fellow queens, you can see that it is higher. Pam Richards, in her book Understanding Tarot, explains that the crown is tall to show that she places a high value on her thoughts because they impact her emotions, because that is where her intuition lies. So her crown is essentially a channel for her emotional wisdom. On the crown, we see 3 small loops, which is the number of creation. The crown has 2 sets of 9 circles, which represent the 9 months of pregnancy, so it links to her creativity, maternity, and motherhood. If we add these together, we get the number 18, which is the number of the Moon card in the Major Arcana. You may recall from the Moon card that it controls the tides, which means that her emotions are always changing. She is holding a cup that I would refer to as a chalice because it is far more elaborate than any of the cups we've seen in this suit. Look at it compared to the cup held by the Knight of Cups. It's also the only vessel that has a lid. On the top of the chalice is a cross, and there are angels on the top of each handle. According to Marcus Katz and Telly Goodwin in their book Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot, this card was based on the Solabusca deck. This is the earliest tarot deck where all of the cards were illustrated, and the first deck was created by an unknown artist and engraved onto metal in the late 15th century. You can see a picture of the Queen of Cups on the screen, and I've put a link in the description box so that you can see all of the cards. As you can see, the chalice had a serpent coming out of it. It was based on the story of Polysena, the Greek mythical daughter of King Priam and Queen Hecuba. I had not heard of her, but did know the story of Achilles, whose only vulnerability was his heel, and it was Polysena's brothers who killed Achilles. The story of Polysena is long, kind of confusing, and a bit gruesome. I've linked to the Wikipedia page in the description if you want more information. For now, I'm going to quote Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot, which says, quote, "Well, the stories vary. In several, she is ambushed while retrieving water with an amphora depicted on the card and sacrificed. The snake, issuing from the vessel, can indicate treachery and betrayal," unquote. If you're not familiar with the word amphora, it is a type of container with a pointed bottom that fits tightly against each other in storage rooms. The handles could be tied together with rope if you were traveling by sea. I would also consider her cup to be a chalice. A chalice is defined as a footed drinking cup that is often used during religious ceremonies. Given the cross and the angels, I think we can all agree that it was based on Christianity. I'm going to rely on Pam Richards for a description of the chalice. I've magnified it on the screen to give you a better idea of what we're talking about. It's a bit of a lengthy description, but there is so much symbolism that I wanted to share it. Quote, "On either side are winged angels showing the higher aspirations of love. Each angel sits on 4 beads, bringing security and safety. Her cup is protected by a lid, which symbolizes controlled and understood emotions and ensures that they cannot be lost, taken, or fallen out. She understands and cherishes her own emotional world above all else, so they need to be cherished and kept safe. The cup represents all her affection, love, compassion, her soft, gentle approach to others as well as herself. The small cross on the top, symbolizing flowing emotional happiness, is where her faith lies. Beneath are presumably fish eggs representing creation, birth, and new beginnings. The ruby set within the cup is symbolic of protection, peace, and wealth, and her emotional prosperity. The cup protects her heart and mind from pain. Around the cup are 3 small images, one an eagle, another a lion, and the third is unknown. The eagle will soar above the world and give her a panoramic view of her feelings. The lion protects, linking to family and those she cares for deeply, kept close and safe from emotional harm." Unquote. She holds the bottom of the elaborate chalice in her right hand, and her left hand is gently touching the base of the chalice. She is looking at it with reverence. She's wearing a blue and white dress with a blue and white cape over the top. White represents purity. Blue represents clarity, intuition, and spirituality. The cape is blue and white with a wave design. Pam Richards points out that these colors portray her sincerity and simplicity, and that the design on the robe shows her connections to the flow of the tides and her feelings. Pam Richards also says that the cloak's deep pink lining displays the queen's sweet nature, her approachability, and her need for things to be rosy. She is wearing socks or stockings. She is touching the water but is not immersed in it, so we can tell that she has some control over her feelings. Her feet are on smooth, colored stones. These are rocks that have been smoothed over time, showing that she has learned how to manage and live with her emotions. She is surrounded by water, which indicates that she is fully immersed in her emotions. In the background, we see yellow cliffs with grass on top. Like mountains, these represent challenges in life. The sky is blue and clear. Nothing is hidden from this queen. When this card appears in an upright position, it can represent someone who is kind, gentle, and maternal. The Queen of Cups is the most emotional of the queens, and she just wants to help people. It can represent someone who is in touch with their emotions. That doesn't mean that her emotions are stable, because they go up and down, partly because she's not intellectualizing them, as in swords, or dealing with them physically, as in wands. She feels her emotions intently, so it could be a bit of a roller coaster. Regardless of how she is feeling, she expresses herself gently and calmly. This card can represent someone who relies heavily on their intuition. This is not somebody who makes decisions based on spreadsheets. She relies on her gut and her inner knowing. It can represent someone who is very sensitive to people's feelings as well as to the feelings of animals. It can represent someone who is good at reading people. She is the kind of person that can see right through you. It can represent someone who is deeply spiritual and feels connected to the universe. She may be interested in metaphysical things such as tarot, meditation, or mediumship. It can represent someone who is very creative, imaginative, and romantic to the point that they might spend too much time daydreaming. However, she shows good and mature judgment when she has to make decisions. It can represent someone who is nurturing, motherly, and ready to help people or animals in need. On the other hand, she may be so willing to help that she doesn't set good boundaries or take care of her own needs. Finally, it can represent someone who is a loyal and devoted friend or love interest, whose character is highly respected. Here's an example of the upright Queen of Cups from my life, and the example is me. Of all the court cards, the Queen of Cups is the one that I most strongly identify with. She is the gentlest of the queens. She is also the most intuitive and most emotional. I'll share why I feel like I embody the Queen of Cups. First of all, I am very intuitive. I can walk into a room and physically feel how someone is feeling. I remember picking up my son from college. I was feeling fine until he got into the car. My stomach immediately started to hurt, and I was literally doubled over in pain. It was no surprise to learn that my son had a bad stomach ache and eventually needed to visit the doctor. I also intuitively know what questions to ask. My father is not in good health, but he's been managing at home for a while now. I talk to my mom twice a week, and a few months ago I randomly asked, "So how many times have the EMTs been to visit you in the last 3 days?" And her answer was either 2 or 3 times. My mom had given no indication that the EMTs had been called, but somehow I knew to ask. Seriously, it's kind of hard to hide stuff from me. I'm also extraordinarily good at reading people, and people trust me. A few weeks ago, my husband had major surgery, and I spent 14 hours in the waiting room at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City. My son, who is in his late 20s, was with me, and he has always found my ability to connect with people very embarrassing. He had to go home about 8 p.m., and we were still waiting for my husband to get to the recovery room. My son said something to the effect of, "I know you'll meet people and be best friends by the time you leave." And he wasn't wrong. I am also very sensitive to the plight of animals. When my current dog was acquired by the Rescue Association, she was badly abused and pregnant with puppies. When the Rescue Association posted her story on their Facebook page, they were inundated with requests for the puppies, but I was the only person who inquired about the mother. Then my husband and I drove 450 miles in a snowstorm to pick her up, and I worked patiently to mostly rehabilitate her. I stopped working with one trainer because I thought she was too mean to deal with such a traumatized dog, and I fired a second trainer after one session when he told me that I needed to be a lot tougher, and that is just not in my nature. For those of you who can't relate, I need to add that life as a Queen of Cups is not always wonderful. I can't watch or read anything that is violent or bloody, or where people aren't being nice to each other, which makes choosing books, movies, documentaries, or TV shows a challenge. When I was a teenager, I read part of a Stephen King novel, and I'm still traumatized decades later. I remember watching the movie Edward Scissorhands when it came out in 1990, which most people would consider to be a pretty sweet movie, but people get cut, and they were also mean, and it was too much for me. Finally, I also fall into the category of people who are so busy nurturing others that they sometimes forget to take care of themselves. So clearly the Queen of Cups is someone I can relate to. When the Queen of Cups appears in a reverse position, it can represent someone who is jealous, untrustworthy, or unfaithful. It can represent someone who is the opposite of nurturing. She doesn't care what other people need or want. It can represent someone who might smother other people with her love, be emotionally distant, or be abusive. Or the only time she will help others is if she gets attention or some other kind of credit. It can represent someone who doesn't care about anyone other than herself, and she wants to be the center of attention at all times. It can represent someone who does not care what other people are feeling. She can be emotionally manipulative, controlling, and nasty. She holds grudges. It can represent someone who is too emotional. They could be described as moody, unstable, or erratic. It can represent someone who is self-centered and is not liked by anyone. It can also represent someone who is hypersensitive. She doesn't know how to create boundaries to protect herself from difficult people. And finally, it can represent someone who doesn't trust her intuition, is easily influenced, and doesn't consider the emotional impact of her decisions. Here's an example of the reverse Queen of Cups from my life, and it is about someone who does not care what other people are feeling. This is a family member who I am not going to identify, but she is somebody who is either clueless or deliberately cruel. Thankfully, I only see her every few years, but she always says something nasty or insulting to me. I am 6 feet tall, and I have always been self-conscious about my height. I also struggled with my weight for many years, and for those reasons was always considered to be a big girl. Her daughter and I are the same age, except that her daughter is 5 feet tall and has always been very slim. At my parents' 50th wedding anniversary party, she walked up to me and said, "You've been twice the size of my daughter since the day you were born," and then walked away. At that point, I probably weighed twice what her daughter did, so her comments weren't wrong, but they were incredibly mean, and there was no reason for her to say anything. One of the qualities that I embody of the Queen of Cups in a reverse position is that I am oversensitive. Probably most people would have laughed that off or just told her to shut up, but not me. I kept my mouth shut and could not shake it off. Clearly, I'm not over it yet because that was 20 years ago, and her comment still stings. Another thing she does is call me Susie Q, which I absolutely despise. She also has a reputation as the town gossip, and if you know her, you don't make the mistake of confiding in her. I'm not sure if she can't read the room or she's just nasty, but to me, she embodies the reverse Queen of Cups. Here are some questions to help you connect with the Queen of Cups. Number 1, do you consider yourself intuitive? Is there a way you can make better use of your intuition? Number 2, have you been accused of being too sensitive or not sensitive enough? How could you change this? Number 3, do you balance nurturing others with nurturing yourself? Number 4, do you think about people's reactions when you speak? And finally, number 5, how do you make decisions? Is it based on facts, on gut feelings, or a combination? I hope this video has helped you to connect with the Queen of Cups. And please join me for the next video, which is the King of Cups.